Hey, you kids! Look it! Look it, look it, look it! Look what just came in me message in Squig Box from Boss McGearguts! It's me! And ain't I the most beautiful thing you ever did see? I mean, just look at this here mega armor! The pistons, the spiky gubbins, and not to mention, so me ours is big! Like, bigger than a death dread! And all that darker morgs, tusks, all that darker! On the left hand, we've got the biggest, killiest claw that even rivals the Prophet's Claw Gork. But even the claws on Gork don't go darker. 3, count 'em, 3 Gatling big shooters. And on the right, oh the right, 3, count 'em, 3 Rattler cannons with 8 barrels each. Yeah, you remember that there special Rattler cannon from that one game with the Orkies Yumi ever to exist, doing all the Chaos Demon crumping? Yeah, it's a lot like that. You Yumis, I'll tell you, 11 barrels of LA. We've got 48 barrels of Zoggin crumping here. But you know, what I loves about it the most is, despite it all, it's still me. Or at least what I wants to be when I finally becomes a Warboss myself. Still with the same iconic mini-air squigs and my make bigger peeping glass. Cool, I can only hope to become this big and this killy when I gets older. So you might be thinking, how can I get myself a big Dakka Boss model like this for myself? Well, all you've got to do is go to Big Boss Gearguts Mech Shop. If it's not on the front page, just do a search for Bullet Boss Glitzdakka. That's me! And it should be the first thing you sees. But if you want to get a bit of a tough discount, use the link I got in the video description and use the code GimGam when you checks out.
Wait, hang on now.
What the? So, what the song is that? Get out of here, you sneaky little git! I don't say nothing. Wait. Is you one of them brain boys?
Sure?
Oh, well, alright then. Now, what's the big idea interrupting me like that, you weedy human-sounding git?
Well, what good is having the biggest and best boss around if you can't do anything with them? I mean, you spend all this time building and painting, and for what? To just sit there on a shelf collecting dust? Screw that! He needs to get out there and crump with the boys!
That's right! So, how exactly is us gonna be crumping out there?
Like this. After a lot of counseling and consideration from friends and a couple of 40k YouTubers, as well as some playtesting, I've got what I think is a pretty balanced datasheet for Bullet Boss Glitzdakka, and as a player, I wanted to showcase all the design choices, what inspired them, and how that... No, this isn't an entirely broken stat line, because I know that's the first thing that everybody thinks of when they see homebrew.
So, what's I supposed to do in this video then?
Oh, that guy over there just called you a skinny kid. Huh?
Oi, you little Saga!
Alright, with that out of the way, let me break down old Bullet Boss Glitzdakka. First of all, you may notice a lot of hefty parallels between this datasheet and Gazgul Maguruk Thraka's. And no, that's not a coincidence. If you're playing against someone who lacks any sort of creative joy in their life and utterly refuses to let you play any sort of homebrew rules, you can use Glitzdakka as a proxy for Gazi. He's about the right size, though maybe a bit bigger. But the thing that's really irritated me about Gazi as of late in 10th is that he feels incredibly limited to what he can do. All he can do is lead Meganobs, which, I'm gonna be controversial here, 40k fans, I find them to be one of, if not the worst orc unit in 10th edition, even before the nerf. That and the only thing that Gaz is really good for is melee fighting and buffing other melee fighting orcs, which to me is the most brain-dead way to play orcs. I'm a Bad Moons player, damn it. I want Dakka and Dakka accessories. So that's what Bullet Boss Glitzdakka is bringing to the table. For core stats, yeah, Glitzdakka is one-to-one with Gaz, but he's also quite a bit more expensive. While Gazi is 235 points for what they bring, Glitzdakka is a whopping 300 points. Remember this as we go through his stat line, please. Same slow movement, same toughness, same saves, invuln saves, wounds, leadership, objective control, so on and so forth. This may seem kind of imbalanced for a shooting warlord, but put a pin on that until we get to the weapon stats. And just like Gazi, Glitzdakka has their very own lucky grot Daki. Though this can be any grot that you want really, I just use Daki because the folks over at my 40k community like the idea of my wife having an OCN model for herself. Thank you for the initial concept, Demonarch. And before anyone starts complaining in the comment section about how feminine looking grots or orcs would never canonically happen, 1. This is for fun, not canon. I don't even want this to be canonical. 2. I just got done playing against a friend of mine who plays Sisters of Battle, and my entire army was running away from St. Celestine who just wouldn't die. In my headcanon, this group of orcs was being utterly annihilated for months if not years by the Sororitas, to a point where they'd be seen as symbols of Humi power, and honestly I could see some weird boys coming out of their grow hole a little bit more rounded. Like I said, non-canon. I don't want it to be canon. I just thought it was funny and a neat concept. But as far as stats go, Daki's stats are the exact same as Makari's through and through. Same 2-up invuln save because, let's face it, I think anyone who sees this is going to be a bit perturbed one way or another. As for what Glitzdakka can lead, unlike Gazi who can stupidly only lead Mega Knobs, Glitzdakka can lead either regular boys or flash kits. But let's be real here, you're gonna want to run Shoota boys specifically with Glitzdakka. Slugga boys don't really get any benefit from his abilities, and without shooting backup, believe it or not, Glitzdakka by himself is fairly unimpressive. Unlike Gaz, who can hit like a freight train by himself, Glitzdakka only really shines when he's leading a unit. Ranged unit at that. And as for leading flash kits, well, not only are they my favorite orc unit of all time, but yes, I am still really sour at the fact that we lost Badrook the Legend, so screw you, GW, I'm giving my favorite unit a leader back. Now, time for the interesting stuff, the weapons. Glitzdakka's primary weapon is a tri-barrel dreadnought-sized Gatling cannon I've dubbed the Roarin' Rattler, as 1. Gatling guns made by orcs are called Rattler cannons, 2. Gatling guns are my favorite guns of all time, and 3. You ever heard of a band called Skinny Lister? Yeah, they're a folk punk band from Greenwich who wrote a song called Rattle and Roar, and I cannot help but think of an orc belting this song out in the middle of a massive fight. But anyway, by and large, the Roarin' Rattler is just a souped-up snaz gun. 24-inch range, 5-up ballistic skill, strength 6, AP -1, 2 damage per shot, heavy and sustained hits 1. Meaning for every 6 that you roll, you add another attack to your wound rolls. The only big difference is the 10 attacks versus the regular snaz gun's 4, and this might seem pretty huge, but remember that a regular squad of 5 flash kits who run only 80 points can get a maximum of 20 shots. That's twice as much as old Glitzdakka. And for 1 round of shooting, they can also have lethal hits. Glitzdakka doesn't get that. Next we got Dadaka Claw, because look at this thing and tell me what in the name of Gorkin Morkin would it be otherwise called. Like the Roarin' Rattler, this thing is just a souped up big shooter. 36-inch range, ballistic skill 5-up, strength 5, 1 damage, but the difference here being the 1 AP and the 10 shots. Now, I love the concept of big shooters, but in-game, the lack of any AP feels really, really weak. Like, regular shooters? Sure, but big shooters? That's like saying a heavy bolter shouldn't have any AP. And while 20 shots at 18 inches of range because of rapid fire feels really strong, well, again, hold that thought. And yes, I know that both of these range weapons are twin-linked, which means you can re-roll all your wound rolls. But again, hold that thought because there's a reason behind all of this. Now moving on to melee weapons, you can kind of see where I try to balance this boy out a bit. Dadaka Claw's melee attack stats are literally just a bog standard power claw. 3 attacks, 4 up to hit, strength 7, AP 2, and 2 damage each. This is nothing. It might look powerful with strength 7 and AP -2, but you're only hitting 3 times with an attack that hits on a 50-50 chance. That's not including any buffs or debuffs that your opponents have to your hit roll. It's not going to be strong enough to take down anything massive like a tank, and it's going to hit with such irregularity that if Glitzdakka gets swarmed by anything stronger than Grots, it's going to be a rough time. Meanwhile, Daki's got to grab a stick because my wife wanted her character to be a runt herd for squigs, and considering her love of animals, I thought that was cute and accurate, but really it's just the same stats as Makari Stabba. And now for the abilities, and hold on to your objections everyone, because while this sounds really strong, well, you'll see. Firstly, we've got Dadaka Boss ability. While this model leads a unit, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, you may re-roll all hit rolls. Plus, if you called a WA this battle round, all ranged weapons count as being at half range for the purpose of determining rapid-fire attacks. Now, while that sounds strong, firstly, let me remind you that Glitzdakka and anything he's leading is only hitting on a 5-up and maybe a 4-up, but that's only for running flash kits and using the Roarin' Rattler and didn't move. That means on average, you've got a 33% chance to even hit anything. But if you do get lucky and roll a bunch of 5s and 6s, your opponent's gonna feel it. But that's the pure nature of orc shooting. It's low accuracy, high volumetric fire, and that's what I wanted Glitzdakka to be an avatar of, the essence of orc shooting. Secondly, let me also remind you that Badrook did the exact same thing for flash kits, at least with the rerolls, and he was only 80 points. And Badrook had a much more lethal stat line with his Rip-A-Gun. And thirdly, the rapid fire attacks buff is only going to apply to shooter boys who go from having 2 shots a model to 3. Now that might seem sizable for a group of 20 shooter boys, but remember that shooters are strength 4, no AP 1 damage weapons with a max range of 18 inches. Outside of chaff, that's not really killing anything reliably and can easily get outranged. Now some of you may be asking, does this mean that Glitzdakka can re-roll all hit rolls and wound rolls with ranged weapons? And the answer is yes. But between the low accuracy and the low strength of the weapons, plus the low damage output of all of his weapons, it's not as scary as you think. But again, more on that in a minute. Finally, if you call to WA this battle round, all orc units within 18 inches of Daki get sustained hits 1 until the end of the battle round. Admittedly, this is the strongest thing that Glitzdakka can do on the board, but there's a lot of hard decisions you're going to have to make. Remember, the default Wall Army ability gives you +1 to your melee weapons profile and ups the strength by 1. Ideally, this is when you want to charge in a melee, but at only 18 inches, this aura isn't going to be covering much of your back to mid-range shooting units. You might be able to get the ranged aura buff capitalized in the shooting phase before you charge, but there won't be many units that are going to be in range to really make that work. And if you're going to buff your mid to backline shooting with that aura, that means that +1 to attack and strength isn't going to mean squat for the rest of the game. So again, it all sounds really strong, but it's going to make you have to make some tough choices. And honestly, that's everything that I wanted to do with Glitzdakka as a presence on the tabletop. Not only did I want them to be an avatar of everything representing how orc shooting can work mechanically, I wanted to do so without making it Gazgul levels of brain dead. Like, there's no pure optimization for Glitzdakka. If you want him to lead flash kits, you're gonna want to be in the mid to back line to capitalize on not just Glitz's shooting, but more importantly, buffing the flash kits' shooting. Because I gotta tell you, with a 4-up native save and no invuln, flash kits are not that durable. And if they go down, so does the majority of the unit's firepower. And if you end up taking shooter boys, well, you're gonna have to be further up the midfield for them to even be in range. And with Glitzdakka, it also means the wall aura is going to be just out of range of a lot of units that could really use that sustained hits 1, like all of your mech guns or your Ludus. Also, for the record, like Gazgul, Glitzdakka takes up the space of 16 models when it comes to transporting his gigantic Dakka-loving bulk. And with only a 5-inch movement, it's gonna be tough to move him up the field in the first place. Finally, the biggest weakness that Glitzdakka and whatever orcs they decide to lead is going to have is how hard they can actually hit. At weapon strength 5 and 6 between Glitzdakka and anything that he can lead, you can easily crush chaff, sure, and you can even do a good job of mopping up Terminators and the like. But anything that's tough 7 and up, and you're gonna be in for an uphill battle. Even with attack rerolls and wounding rerolls, at 1 and 2 damage per pop and only AP -1, you're gonna struggle to take down vehicles, monsters, and not to mention some of the other tough elite units like Eldar Wraiths. And also not to mention, like any Horde armies, Blast and Torrent weapons are going to give Glitzdakka a huge headache as his 10 to 20 bodyguards get melted or bombed. I mean, with Daki's 2-up invuln and their own 4+, Glitzdakka is pretty tough, but even their impressive firepower isn't going to be punishing enough to deal with swarms, flamers, and crack weapons. Remember too, Glitzdakka is 300 Zoggin points. That's almost a quarter of your army in one micro unit. So, is Glitzdakka strong? Yeah. Sticking with a lot of boys and their overall high volumetric fire is going to put a lot of hurt on anything out there in the galaxy. Is Glitzdakka overpowered? Absolutely not, based on what I playtested against. Throw anything tough 7 at them or swarm them with blast weapons and torrent weapons, or man, just get a good deep striking unit in and Glitzdakka could easily be on the ropes. But despite all of that, Glitzdakka is everything I ever wanted an orc big warboss to be. The epitome of everything that is Dakka, everything that is orc shooting aesthetically and mechanically. So, if you want to grab Bullet Boss Glitzdakka for yourself, pop on over to Gear Guts Mech Shop, link in the description, and use the code GimGam to get a little bit of a discount. Big personal shout out to Gear Guts too. While I had some input with the design, all of the detailing came right from them, and I think they did a stellar job.
Boy, who's you calling a scaredy grunt?
Huh?
Yeah, that weedy shroom over there said that you said that I was a coward for loving me Dakka.
Uh-oh.
Get out of me video, you me git! And the rest of you lot, you knows the drill. Sub up and zog off!